Right now we want to get back up to Roland Sproul in News Chopper 4 overhead. What appears to be, maybe four Waymo vehicles, Roland? At least three.
I'm counting at least four, possibly even five. We're trying to reposition here. My pilot is trying to get us past this building a little bit, but we've seen several explosions from these vehicles so far, and fortunately nobody was anywhere too close to sustain any injuries or anything like that. But look at these things. They're just completely involved in fire right now, putting up smoke that can be seen from just about anywhere in downtown Los Angeles. Very dark colored putrid smoke. And again, no indication of LA City Fire Department or law enforcement on Los Angeles Street here, just north of Arcadia, as we try and reposition here and give you a better shot of these vehicles, which pretty much they've been burning now. I got to assume we lifted off from Pacoima probably about, what do you think, George? Probably about 25 minutes ago or so, and these things were already pretty well involved then. So you can see they're pretty well consumed now, burnt down to the roadway by all indications, as you can see right there. And again, just putting up a lot of smoke in this area.
Yeah, we're seeing a lot of smoke, but you were also talking about how dangerous it is, you and Jonathan, and you were saying it could even explode and send shrapnel nearby. So I'm just wondering, are there people right there? Can you even tell there's so much smoke?
Yeah, there are people that unfortunately have absolutely no idea what they're looking at. They're completely oblivious to what the potential is here with these lithium-ion batteries and so forth, and they're riding their bikes, let's post up right there, George, if we can. Let's not move anymore. They completely oblivious to what could be happening here, and walking in between, riding their skateboards, riding their bikes in between. We'll try and get back on the other side here so we can get a better shot of that now that the smoke has kind of obscured our view. But you can see this one vehicle right here now completely down to the ground, and not going to be much left here, guys.
Yeah, this is all happening right near Olvera Street, the heart of Los Angeles, the origin of Los Angeles, and just an unfortunate sight. A lot of historical buildings there being threatened by these fires potentially as well. And really, Kathy, no way for, as Roland pointed out, for firefighters to get there safely.
Yeah, and hopefully it'll just, as he said, they're burning to the ground, so hopefully we won't see another explosion or any threat. And I would think that nobody would want to be near there. Because just the smoke has to just be nasty to try to, breathe in that area. Oh,
it's unthinkable. That smoke's so toxic, absolutely. And Roland, if you can still hear us, what's the situation there on the 101 freeway? We saw that big enforcement action once protesters took over the freeway. CHP got them out. Is it open as usual? I think I did see some vehicles there.
Yeah.
Yeah, it looks like the northbound lanes are open now. Southbound lanes are still completely shut down.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Roland. All right, we're going to check back with you in just a moment. This is still live over downtown LA, where 3, possibly 4 Waymo vehicles have been set on fire. They are still burning, and they are emitting a lot of smoke there. There are people in the area, so we are concerned about their safety now, but it seems like firefighters cannot get in at this point, or they at least haven't. We haven't seen any coming to the scene to try to put that out.
It's just too tense and too dangerous still the situation there. It looks like they may just let these burn to the ground. Right now we want to get up to our Camilla Rambaldi. She joins us live in our newsroom. She's been following the latest, I believe, on arrests that may have been taking place during these protests. Camilla.
Yeah, hi, Jonathan and Kathy. We're talking about arrests made by ICE officers over the weekend. On its X page, the Department of Homeland Security says that, quote, ICE officers are removing the worst of the worst from LA streets. The department says 6 men were arrested yesterday. Here are some of the names and photos that were released on X today by federal officials. According to Homeland Security, these men have a criminal history. Federal officials say Jose Hernandez Huitron, a citizen of Peru, has a conviction for robbery that resulted in a 10-year sentence. Jordan Meza Esquivel, a citizen of Honduras, DHS says has arrests that include distribution of heroin and cocaine and domestic violence. Orlando Veneracion Enriquez, a citizen of the Philippines, had convictions for theft, assault, burglary, and rape, according to DHS. DHS says the other 3 men that were arrested have convictions that range from second-degree murder, grand theft, larceny, and illegal entry. As far as how many people were arrested during the immigration protests, according to the LAPD, 27 arrests were made yesterday. A spokesperson with the LASD says yesterday in Paramount, 1 person was arrested for assaulting a peace officer and that 1 person was arrested for throwing a Molotov cocktail. The LASD says 3 deputies suffered minor injuries there. DHS Assistant Secretary Tricia McLaughlin released this statement on the arrests and the protests in LA, and it reads in part, instead of writing, they should be thanking ICE officers every single day who wake up and make our communities safer. End quote. I have reached out to the LAPD for updates on arrests made during today's protests in downtown Los Angeles. We're still waiting to get updated numbers right now, but from our coverage on the ground earlier and from News Chopper 4, we did see several arrests that were being made there today. That's the very latest in the newsroom. Camilla Rambaldi, NBC4 News.
Camilla, thank you. We're going to go out live to pictures in Westwood right now. This is what Eric Leonard was referring to earlier. You can see members of the California National Guard now stationed outside the federal building there. That building is no stranger to protests. We know around 300 National Guard members are in Los Angeles after President Trump ordered the deployment of about 2,000 troops. It's a move that has been sharply criticized by Governor Gavin Newsom, particularly because it's typically Newsom's role in deploying the California National Guard. About 500 Marines, we understand, are also getting ready to deploy.
Yes, and we understand that the governor has asked the federal government not to do that. They really don't like the image of that. They have said over and over again that we can deal with the situation that's going on, and it just doesn't rise to the criteria of doing this. But let's check in with Eric Leonard once again to talk a little bit more about the role of the National Guard and the image that it presents, having them here on the streets, and when we do use them and have used them in the past.
Yeah, so this is an unusual situation for 1,000 reasons, but to the National Guard in particular, typically they're activated through the state of California. The governor's office actually has a military liaison unit that's in it, and they serve as the chief, for lack of a better term, of state National Guard resources. Remember, National Guard troops are California residents who are there to provide all kinds of additional aid to the state of California. That's anywhere from firefighting to warfighting. They can be federalized and used as components of the U.S. military, but that's usually reserved only for warfighting and military functions, not the sort of civil unrest that is the pretext for them being brought into Southern California. So the really unusual part is that as they're being used for some sort of law enforcement, law and order purpose, rather than being under the umbrella of the state governor's office, which would in turn put them under the command of law enforcement acting in a civilian capacity, they're being used in a military capacity where the rules for the way they're allowed to behave while they're out on the streets are somewhat different and possibly unknown to some degree because this simply hasn't happened in this way before. But it also means that because of the way that they were federalized, their role is somewhat limited. There has not been a declaration of the National Insurrection Act, nor has there been an act of Congress authorizing the federal government to use them. What that means is that they have limited roles that they can fulfill. Mostly it has to do with them being able to protect federal facilities, which is exactly what we've been seeing in these live pictures from Westwood, where the federal building is now surrounded by some number of these National Guard troops. It means that they can act to protect federal employees that are doing their jobs. That could mean being out with some of these federal agents from ICE, Customs and Border Protection, the FBI, the DEA. We're not really sure, but they could be a component of trying to provide some kind of crowd control to them while those federal agents, which are civilian federal agents, are doing whatever job it is they might be out doing. Beyond that, it doesn't seem like they can have much of an active role if the feds are following the letter of the law. Now, as for the active duty Marines that some federal officials said were waiting in the wings and had been told to be on alert to be brought into Southern California, I'm told from city and state officials that's potentially crossing a threshold that nobody could really anticipate. Military troops are there to do military things, not local law enforcement. And if they were to be directed to come up into Southern California, the speculation we've heard from some folks in state government is they would be limited to doing some sort of logistical work to support the National Guard troops that are out there. There's all kinds of rules about this because in the United States, the military is not supposed to be used for law enforcement. There are some limited exceptions, and I think that's what we'll be exploring in the next few days. Back to you guys.
All right. Thank you, Eric. We want to switch over to Roland Spruill. If you can tell us where you are, we just saw the LAPD mounted unit come through, the officers on horses clearing people. Roland, you were watching that.
Yeah, guys, this has been... wow, I can't, it's indescribable actually what I just saw. They've got, and it's hard to see here because we're on the other side of this building here, so we're going to try and reposition. But what we just saw was we saw law enforcement, presumably LAPD, coming in on horseback and shooting perhaps some pepper balls or some sort of rounds, not less than lethal rounds. And the participants, or rather the protesters, were using the street barricades as shields to shield themselves from the pepper balls, and they're trying to push them down away. Now, this is at the corner of Temple and Main Street, and you can see a number of these protesters now being pushed back down Main Street. We're right in front of City Hall. But they are trying to hold their position here as LAPD comes in on horseback and tries to get them to recede away from that intersection. And presumably, I'm not sure where they're trying to push them back to, but you can still see a significant number of protesters right here in front of City Hall and in front of the park here that have all gravitated to this area. But again, we're trying to get to the other side here so we can see the activity. George, I'm getting heat here. So we can see the activity, what's going on horseback there.
Yeah, this is actually, I believe, on Spring Street and Temple, Roland, there, right in front of Gloria Molina Grand Park, right where it meets LA's iconic City Hall. And this is just an unfortunate scene that we're continuing to see play out. Is this just one faction, or is this the same group of people we saw over the freeway? I mean, it seems to have just scattered all over the place now.
Yeah, I stand corrected. I'm sorry. We're moving around so much. I stand corrected. Yes, Spring Street and Temple. Unclear whether or not this is the same group of people who are on the freeway. We've got people all over the place here, and activity all over the place taking place. It's not quite clear exactly what the objective is as far as LAPD pushing the people away from this intersection. Short of just standing there, there does not appear to be any real activity. They just appear to be just standing there. But we're trying to get a better shot of that intersection of Spring and Temple so we can try and establish exactly what was it that made LAPD push these people back away from the intersection. But otherwise, they're flying their flags, they're flying their banners. No real aggressive behavior that we can see here from this point of view anyway.
Yeah, it may just be that they were trying to clear the intersection. And in fact, we were talking to our reporter Karma Dickerson earlier, who's also there in downtown and had a view sort of what was going on. And she said she had talked to people. They didn't really know where, people were gathering. They were asking her, where is everyone gathering? So it just seems like we have these little pockets of people that have gathered in different areas of downtown LA.
And even though you are seeing a lot of people there on the ground, this is certainly a small group compared to the numbers that we were seeing earlier. I believe this group was positioned on the other side of City Hall there on Main Street and Temple earlier. And the LAPD set up a skirmish line there with the mounted unit, Kathy, as you mentioned, and they eventually started pushing them back. There were some skirmishes, but no arrests at this point. It looks like they're trying to create some sort of line. And though, again, we have to remind our viewers, this has been deemed an unlawful protest now at this point, and Mayor Bass, urging people to go home, saying that this is not peaceful protesting, especially when you're blocking the roadways there in downtown LA as well as the freeways.
Exactly. It's not the image. She said they want to present with you the mounted unit right there. They train locally, and if you know anything about horses, horses typically spook in a situation like this where you're seeing all this activity, loud noises, and you've got a crowd. they're specially trained so that they can withstand all sorts of stuff. They do not react to it. So it is an interesting thing, and it's a good way for the police to use a non-aggressive means to get the crowd to go where they want them to go.
It is now 6:30 on this Sunday evening. We are following the ongoing demonstrations and protests in response to federal immigration actions in the city and county of Los Angeles over the last several days. We want to bring in our investigative reporter, Eric Leonard, who's been giving us a perspective of what law enforcement is set to do here. And Eric, you know, I keep thinking back to the last several days as the sun is beginning to set here shortly. This is unfortunately when we tend to see the most violence. Most of the protesters who, you know, are peaceful, they tend to get out of the way here. They tend to go home, and what's left are these agitators usually who aren't afraid to clash with officers there on the ground, and this is when we start to see the vandalism and other incidents.
Yeah, we have seen that the last few nights, not necessarily as the result of one of these more organized demonstrations at some of the locations around downtown L.A. Incidentally, Grand Park there, which is the park directly adjacent to the criminal courts building across the street from L.A. City Hall, I believe that was one of the locations where there was supposed to be a planned rally this afternoon. So as we've been speaking throughout our live coverage this afternoon, speculating about what it is the LAPD was trying to do as far as the crowd control in the downtown area. Perhaps what we're seeing now is what was ultimately intended, which was to push folks out of the area of that federal building complex where there's been so much tension and friction, not only between demonstrators and a fraction of those demonstrators and local police, but also with the federal agents who've been guarding the federal complex, particularly the detention center down there, and move all of these demonstrators back towards Grand Park, which is, again, where there was supposed to be a planned demonstration this evening. We're seeing the LAPD use members of its mounted unit, which are part of the Metropolitan Division. Again, this is a group that do a lot of crowd control training. And Kathy, as you were mentioning a minute ago, the typical horse will, of course, be terrified to run through a crowd or to hear loud noises, let alone explosions, gunshots. They work with these horses in these crowd control scenarios quite a bit, and the advantage is not only for the officers being up high, but can't really walk past a horse, so they're able to use them to push people one direction or another without having to engage in any kind of more hand-to-hand type of interactions, which certainly could lead to more friction. It's interesting that we're seeing the crowd there being pushed back towards Grand Park in downtown L.A. Again, as we've been covering this afternoon, when the LAPD has dealt with crowd control issues, one of the key things is that they provide an avenue for people to leave. If you're telling people that it's an unlawful assembly and they've got to go home, you've got to give clear instructions, and there has to be a clear path for people to leave before anyone is subject to an arrest. It certainly looked like, at least in the preliminary images we had of those folks being pushed by the officers on horseback, that there was some friction going back and forth. It looked like things were being thrown at the police. It looked like the police may have fired some of those less lethal rounds towards the crowd, but our perspective's been a little bit difficult. There's lots of high buildings in downtown L.A., and as Roland Spruill in News Chopper 4 was pointing out, the sun is coming from a direction that makes it difficult to see into some of the shadow areas as clearly as we would like. Jonathan, as you were discussing, that sometimes these things take on an added level of aggressiveness after dark, that could also be a reason why we're seeing officers begin to try to take some action now to try to begin to move people out of the area where they've had that friction the last few nights.